Well, hello, YouTube. Born to be Wild NE here. And as always, yeah, you got it. NE stands for Nebraska. Go Big Red Yay Huskers. Hey, out for a ride on June 23rd, aka the third day of summer. It's a Saturday. It's going to be a cooler day than we've been having and that we're going to have here again fairly shortly. But the humidity is high. We've had some fronts come through, I think 2 of them in the last 3 or 4 days, and had a bit of rain, broke that high heat that we've been having. So it's pretty nice. Some big news, for me anyway. Tomorrow I'm riding down to Wichita, Kansas. Not riding, I'm going to drive. To look at bike that I might be considering as a new bike. Looking at a Super Tenere ES. It's used, but my interactions so far indicate that it's in pretty good shape. So, as I did with this bike, I'm going to go down. Well, it's quite a bit longer than what I did for this bike. I'm going to go down and just look over the bike carefully and talk to the owner, understand how they used it, how they maintained it, kind of get a feel for the trustworthiness of the person. Not that I have any reason to distrust at this point, but I think it's always good when you're buying a used motorcycle to take a look. I told him I didn't want to do a test ride tomorrow. I just want to look at the bike pretty good and talk to him about it. Last weekend, actually it was Friday, so it's been 8 days ago, I drove down to Kansas City, and Yamaha Motorsports had one of their demo trailers full of bikes parked at one of the dealers for Friday, Saturday demo days. And I got to demo the Super Tenere and also the MT909. Unfortunately, they didn't have an FJR 1300, even though I had called the day before and had been told they would have an FJR 1300. So that's how that goes. It's only less than a 3.5 hour drive down to that dealership, so it wasn't a bad day. And I actually spent all day Friday and most of the day Saturday in Kansas City. After the demo days on Friday morning, I was able to go to the President Truman Library and Museum. And then on Saturday, got to go to the National Museum of World War I that's in Kansas City. And I had never been to either of those two very interesting places. In March, when I was down in southern Florida, my brother and I went down to Key West and had gone to the Little White House, as it was called, was a facility on the barracks of the U.S. Naval Station down there that Truman went to get away from it all I think he spent, of his nearly 8 years in office, he spent like 173 days at the little White House. That was a pretty interesting tour also. So it's a good couple days. My right hip is still not where I want or need it to be. Although interestingly, the riding position on both those other bikes fit me better than this low cruiser does. And I didn't have the issues on either of those two bikes that I seem to still have today on this bike. So, I have a 34-inch inseam, and I'm 6'4". So a taller bike, I think, with this, the controls forward, and actually I think my knees are higher than my hips, even though I've tried to add cushioning to build up the seat. I don't think that's as good for my hips as having the knees below the hips. And the controls are more in a neutral, under the butt position, I think, on both those bikes. I had intended to film my demos, which would have been my first ever. They were my first ever demos. But I got there, walked up to the registration desk. They asked me what bike I wanted to ride. They said, well, get your gear. We got a group going out right now. So I didn't have time to set up the camera. And then when I got back from that first ride, they said, okay, what's your other bike? And they said, okay, get ready. We got another group going out right now. So I suppose I could have said, look, I'll wait. But not really knowing how busy it was going to be, I said, let's do this while I can. And actually, the time I was there was not very busy at all. I suspect Saturday would have been more busy. But getting it done gave me a little bit more time at the Truman Library and Museum. So it all worked out. The only thing that didn't work out, they didn't have an SJR 1300. I have this dream idea of heading to Alaska next year. Taking my time. I'm retired now, so I could do 60-day, 75-day, taking my time up through beautiful Northwest United States, Western Canada, and then, of course, Alaska. And if I'm up to it, I'd like to do the haul road up to Dead Horse and take the tour to dip my toes in the Arctic Ocean up there. And while you can do it on cruisers, that may not be the optimal bike. So when you combine the Super Tenere has more power than my bike, appears to have a more comfortable seating position for me, and if I can swing it, I'd be looking at the ES version, which has the electronically changeable suspension, preload and dampening. And cruise control! Yay! going on long trips, even though I usually stay off the interstate, you know, there are good stretches where cruise control would be pretty handy. I actually went as far as ordering an owner's manual for both the FJR and the Super Tenere ES. Those came in yesterday, and last night I studied the Super Tenere manual fairly closely. And it all looks really good with, you know, one exception, which I probably should have checked out ahead of time. The engine in that requires premium fuel, 91 octane or higher. So it's a almost 1200 cc two-cylinder. Lots of get up and go in every gear. I did reach out to Living Off the Slab. He's a moto vlogger that went to Alaska last year from Massachusetts. I think his trip was 31 days or thereabouts. And in preparation for that trip, he bought himself a Super Tenere ES. So I reached out to him to ask him about the availability of premium fuel on his truck. And he said, for the most part, they didn't have a trouble finding 91 octane or higher. But they did take some octane booster along with them, because when they got a little further into the hinterland, the best they could find in some places was 89 or 90, which probably wouldn't even be an issue. But, so anyway, research and decisions to do there. I'll post a picture of my early rough draft planned route up and back. It'll be zoomed out pretty far, so it'll be hard to see detail. I hope to be able to camp most nights. Maybe 3 nights out of 4, something like that. And I believe I've got all the gear for that I need already, with the exception of evaluating whether I want to take a tarp or not. Sometimes if it's raining when you're setting up camp, the inside of your tent, I've got a mesh top tent that is obviously open to the rain until I get the rain fly on, which is a 2-step setup. So if it's raining, you could, in theory, set up the tarp to allow the interior of the mesh tent to stay dry until you get the fly on. And of course, I'll have to look at, I'll have to have some bear spray and evaluate whether I need to take some kind of bear-proof container. To store food and toothpaste, deodorant, and other fragrant things that might attract the wild beasts. But I really liked Living Off the Slab's approach. He and his buddies, he got a new bike. He had 2 buddies go with him, although they shipped their bikes out to Boise, Idaho, and he rode out Medicine and Boise. And on the return trip. I think they shipped their bikes back to Massachusetts from Spokane, I believe it was. And once again, living off the slab, rode back by himself. So I liked what they did, living off the slab. Got the bike in time to be able to figure out how he wanted to outfit it for such a long journey. They did some weekend camping trips to practice packing the bike, figure out which way was the best way for each of them to pack their bikes. And living off the slab did videos on all that and shared that with all of us. So I learned a lot, and I thank him for his effort. His other bike is a Victory, a big old cruiser, 900-pound cruiser or something like that. Well, it's a gorgeous, pretty bike, but not the kind of bike that you prefer if you're going to Alaska. They did not do the haul road. They simply didn't have time in their they're not retired jobs, so they had to manage the time a little bit more carefully than I might have to. So I have to do a little research on understanding octane booster. He gave me the brand that they use. I'm going to say Breyers, but I'll put it on the screen. Understand what it does. Is there any risk to a motorcycle of using it? Doesn't sound like you have to use it very often on such a trip. How much do you need? How much do you add when you fill up? That kind of stuff, just the logistical details. So, that is a big adventure. I got the 2018 edition of Milepost, which is the small B Bible for planning travels to Alaska, and covers Western Canada also, the approaches to and from, the various approaches, the Western approach, Central approach, Eastern approach, blah, blah, blah. And it is remarkably detailed. I mean, it tells you on each highway what milepost is a scenic overview, or a trailhead, or a campground. When is that campground open? Because going there or coming back, I might flip my route. Going there, I was planning on going over Beartooth Pass and going to the Sun Road in Glacier Park. And I know this year those roads didn't even open to vehicular traffic until Memorial Day or a few days afterwards. So the timing of all that is going to be interesting. The weather up in Alaska is not terribly predictable, but you can, generally they say the odds are first half of June, second half of June might be the best time where the weather is a little bit more predictable, but they clearly warn you not to expect to know what kind of weather you're going to hit. You're going to need to know every bit of it. A year or two ago, I watched a moto vlog, which I thought was very, very well done. It's over an hour long, which, is a long thing to watch. But this guy was from North Carolina, and he did an Alaska ride. And he did it on, if I remember correctly, a 2003 Kawasaki Concourse. So, it's a sport touring type of bike. I dare suggest that he probably has more riding experience than I do. And he also, talks pretty clearly about, being careful, picking. That haul road, if it's wet, is supposed to be slippery, and stretches of it are going to be wet because if it's dry, they wet it on purpose to try to keep the dust down for the big commercial trucks that haul supplies up to Dead Horse that follows the Alaska pipeline up to Dead Horse. You can't even get to the Arctic Ocean on public land. The oil companies have control of the shoreline, so they do offer van tours to the shore, and if the shore is not still frozen over, which is another if, you can dip your feet in or wade in the Arctic Ocean and then try to warm up your little toesies. So I'm excited about that. Let's see if I make it happen. Life being what it is, I don't have control of many things, and other things are higher priority. Mostly, speaking of my youngest kid, who has had medical challenges since age 12, 18 years now. And obviously her life and support needs are top priority. And all else is second fiddle. So I can plan, and I might get close to the date and something happens and I just have to postpone. But having done the planning, it could be applied to a future year. Anyway, enough of my babbling. Take care, all.